Minutes past 5 on Newstalk Drive this Thursday evening. Now, just yesterday, the Governor of the Central Bank, Philip Lane, rejected questions from reporters that the economy was on the brink of another housing bubble. Today, some new data. Mortgage approvals have surged 62% in the first quarter of this year compared to the same time last year. These are figures that were released by the Banking and Payments Federation of Ireland. So what does that mean? Well, it means in January, 1,900 people had their mortgage approved. In February, 2,800. In March, 3,200. So it is heading up, up, up. And this is adding pressure to a market that everyone acknowledges does not have enough supply. In a moment, we will speak to Pierce Doherty, who is the Sinn Féin spokesperson on finance and also their TD for Donegal Southwest, or for Donegal, sorry, it's not split up anymore. But now we have John McCartney, Director of Research with Savills, Dublin Commercial. John, is there a bubble?
I don't believe so under any conventional definition, of a bubble where prices are driven beyond their reasonable value by an abundance of credit. I don't think that is the case. I mean, we have to remember that although, and I think Philip Lane emphasised the point yesterday, that although they've adjusted the mortgage lending rules, it was a relatively minor tweak, and we still have the safeguards of the LTI multiples, the loan to income multiples that are still in place. So I don't think that there's any suggestion that we're back in a bubble. I have to say that a lot of people will welcome slightly easier lending. Certainly first-time buyers that were struggling to get a deposit together, I think will be quite relieved that has clearly become easier, combined with Help to Buy and the relaxation of the mortgage lending rules. It's made life easier for them. But I suppose the question is whether it is really ideal that young people are taking on more credit to buy houses, because that is a burden that they have to carry for the next 25 years. So it's an open question. I would have liked to have seen housing development stimulated by cutting the costs of construction, and developers could have still made a profit, and young people wouldn't have had to borrow so much. But we are where we are. OK, well, John, pop those earphones on beside you while I ask Pierce Doherty the same question, because the Governor of the Central Bank has rejected it. Pierce Doherty, do you believe we're on the cusp of another housing bubble?
Well, I think, first of all, the danger is that we try to say, are we about to experience what we experienced 10 years ago, which was very much a credit-led property boom. And obviously you're not doing that. And while you're seeing quite a significant increase year on year in terms of mortgage lending, it's still very low in terms of the type of lending that we had in the past, or indeed the type of lending that we need to, if you think that we need to be building 25 to 30,000 houses per year, then obviously the majority of them will be purchased by mortgage borrowers. So therefore, we're nowhere near those type of the place where Ireland needs to be. The question in terms of a bubble doesn't just necessarily need to be a credit-fueled bubble. So the question is house prices rising dramatically, and could they then dramatically fall? And the answer is yes, because what we have is a complete and utter shortage of supply, yet an escalating level of demand, and we can see it again in relation to the figures where the amount of mortgage approvals compared to mortgage drawdown show that people wanted to go out there, want to purchase houses, but simply don't have the supply there. And when we see from the CSO that house prices are rising at double-digit rates, then that is time to say that we could be entering into bubble territory if this continues.
The approval and drawdown difference in figures, and it is a big enough difference, and I'll ask you both about this, starting with you, Pierce Doherty. A lot of my friends are showing me the text conversations whereby they've been to view a house on Saturday, and then on Monday, Tuesday, they keep getting the text updates to say it's gone up 5, 10, 15, 20. In one case of a friend, it went up 35,000 from 400 to 435 between Saturday and Tuesday. Could that be part of the reason that they were approved for the type of house they were looking for, but it wasn't the price that house then went for?
Yeah, I think there's a number of things now. People get approval before they start house hunting, and they go then and look. Others are self-building, so they have approval beforehand. But there's no doubt about it that it's a seller's market out there, and prices are increasing. And people are being used, are bidding against each other, and prices are going up. One of the interesting things in relation to the information that's there from the Banking and Payments Federation today is that while it shows that first-time buyers has increased by nearly 70%, so there's 70% more mortgages to first-time buyers than there were this time last year, the value of those mortgages has gone up by 93%. Now, if you look at any of the other categories, such as real estate lending or remortgaging or mover purchasers, what you tend to see is the trend remains the same. They increase by about 60%, the amount of people more extra that are in those categories, and the value of the loans are about 60% additional as well. So what we're seeing specifically is first-time lenders, the properties that they're purchasing, whether they're new properties or second-hand, we don't have that detail, but we're seeing that the value of lending has gone up, and that is reflective of the fact that people are being pushed out of the market and can't draw down these loans. But there is only so many houses to go around, and there's so many people. I was talking to somebody who works in my office where there's a room for rent in their house. There have been 200 people interested in that within 24 hours. When it was previously lent 6 years ago, there was 10 people interested in it. And that just is to show you the type of demand that's out there and the lack of supply in the same breath.
Yeah, the appetite. John McCarthy, the same kind of space with yourself, because, you know, when you do the sums, it is cheaper if you can get the mortgage than to rent. And we just heard Pierce's anecdote there about 200 applicants for one room. The appetite is ferocious, and I'm just wondering if that's why the difference between the approval number and then those who eventually draw that money down and seal the deal.
Yeah. Well, what we also have to remember, of course, Chris, is that the drawdowns data is, in a sense, backwards looking. It reflects activity that happened in the market, 6 months ago, 5 months ago, whereas the approvals is very much forward looking, and it gives us a leading indicator of what's likely to happen in the future. And I think Pierce has made a good point. When we look at the forward looking approvals, what we see is that the aggregate value of the approvals is rising at a faster percentage rate than the number of loans that are being dished out. And I think what that means invariably is that the average loan value is increasing. And indeed, it is interesting to note that increase in the average size of the loan is concentrated among the first-time buyer cohort. So between December and the end of March, and that is the period after the two policy initiatives were introduced, the average first-time buyer loan increased by 3.2% to about €200,000. The average loan for movers in the market actually fell by about 1.8% in that period. So I do think that generally more credit will facilitate house price growth and house price inflation, and it does seem to be concentrated in that first-time buyer market. But what else would you expect?
OK, on that note, gentlemen, thank you both. John McCarthy, Director of Research with Savills Dublin Commercial, and Pierce Doherty, Sinn Féin Finance Spokesperson and TD for Donegal. It is a jungle out there, and people are very hungry to get themselves a home and to get themselves a mortgage. 53106, please, for your text messages, or at Newstalk Drive for your tweets.